Welcome to Cheap Controls. We make videos on things that we struggled with, hoping to help you so you don't. Consider subscribing and hitting that bell. In this video I'm going to go over the TSW command, which is a command you can use to disable an object like a button on the Nextion display. I already have the project configured. It uses two pages and they're pretty identical. One page controls a heater, the other page controls a motor. Both of them have just a text box at the top that have no code, just to identify the page you're on. They both have a button that goes back and forth between the two pages. There's an emergency stop switch on each page that hasn't been configured yet. I have a text box on each page to identify if the heater or the motor is on or off, and then I have the control switch. At this point, the only thing that's set up is the control switch. I have the code over here that detects the color of T1, and all it does in this case is alternate between red and blue. So when the heater's off, it's cool, it's blue, and when it's on, it's red. So if it detects that it's blue, it turns it to red. In any other case, it turns it to blue. And I have it change the text. On page 2, it's almost identical, except for I go between red for off and green for on, and I change the text from motor off to motor running. I'm not using the TSW statements yet. Those will be tied into the e-stop. I'm going to run this right now. What should happen is as we tap this, this should alternate. And you can see it goes heater on, heater off. We're on page 2, motor running, motor stopped. But I haven't got these set as global, so when I start it running and I go back to page 1, I come back, it's motor off. So the first thing we have to do is we have to set the buttons as global so that they maintain their state when we change pages. On page 2, we select the motor off. Go here and change it to global. Go to page 1, set the heater off, and set it to global. Now we want to focus on the e-stop switch. I'm going to expand this so we can see a little bit more of the code. When we activate the e-stop switch, we want two things to happen. We want the heater, if it's on, to turn off, and we want the heater control switch to give us an indication that it's no longer usable, and we're going to have it go to red for that. So when we press this, we want to check its value. On a dual action button, it can be a 1 or a 0. So if the button value is 0, which means it hasn't been pushed or it's gone from being pressed to being unpressed, then we want to do two things. We want to set the heater control button back to this gray color, and we want to enable it. The 50712 is the gray color. And here's where we use the TSW command. It simply works where you set the object and then you set the state. 0 means that it is disabled and 1 means that it is enabled. And so if the e-stop switch is not pressed, we want it to be enabled. And then in any other case, which really is if BT0 value equal 1, but just in case there's an error case, we want it to error on the side of it's in the emergency stop position. We want these two commands to happen again, but this time we want it to be 0, and we want it to be red. And red is 63,488. Now we're going to turn the heater off. If it's on, we want to turn it off. So we want to change the color to the blue color. And that color is 2047. And we also want to change the text because it would have been saying heater on in the case that it's heater off. So we need to change it to heater off. We also want this switch to maintain its state of being in an emergency mode whether we change pages or not. So we need to go down to the attributes and change it to a global variable. Now we can copy this code because we're going to want to do the exact same thing on page 2. It's It's a little bit different though, because we want it to say motor off. And we want the color to be green. But we do want to set this e-stop switch. Oh, I put that on the page. We want it to be here. Make sure I didn't leave it there. Now we want to set this button to be global. We'll compile just to make sure I typed it in correct. Looks good. So now we'll debug it. We should still have control of the heater on and off. And we should be able to, we'll go ahead and turn it on, and now we'll e-stop it, and this should go back to off, and this should change to red. That's exactly what happened. Now let's go to page 2. Should have control. Turn that to running, off, and motor control red, and this shouldn't function. I didn't test it on the first page. Let's go back to page 1 and make sure that I can't make any changes. It didn't hold that to red. And I can make a change even though the e-stop has been pressed. Let's go back to page 2. It didn't hold that to red either, and it looks like I can change it. So we need to figure out how to hold the disabled when we change pages. What we can try first is we'll set this control button to a global variable. Set this one to global. Go to page 1, set this one to global. It's as simple as hitting this, e-stopping it, shows off. Let's go to page 2, and then let's go back. It still says off, that's still red, but we can still make the change. So the TSW command doesn't hold, there's no way to hold it globally. What we're going to have to do is when we come back to each page, we'll have to check the status of the e-stop switch and then re-enable the disable or enable command. But let's set this back to local so it doesn't use up memory. And this we'll make the change on the page itself. And I like to use the post initialize portion of it. And what we're going to check, we only need to check if the BT0, if this e-stop switch is equal to 1. Otherwise, it doesn't matter. And if it is 1, we want to do what this does when we press it. So we can go to this and we can grab this right here, copy it, go back to the page and paste it. Oh, put it at the wrong spot. So what we want to do when we come to the page, if this value is activated, we want to set B0 to red. We want to disable it with the TSW B00. We want to make sure that this is blue and it says heater off. So let's just test this page. So we'll turn it on to make sure the e-stop works. We can't. I'm clicking on it. We'll go to page 2. When we come back, these should both be red, and this should be blue and say heater off. And we shouldn't be able to activate it. Now let's make sure that it works in the on state. We're going to leave it on. Go to page 2. The heater should still be on, and we should still be able to control it. Let's make the change to page 2 now. Let's just copy this. Go to page 2 and paste it. There is a difference in this right here, so let's go to this e-stop switch. Copy these 4 lines. go back to this and paste them in here. So on page 2, when you come to the page, if the e-stop has been activated, we want to set this button to red. We want to deactivate it because we want to make sure that this is red and that the motor is off. Let's do one more quick test. We'll run through the steps on this one even though we know that this works. E-stop it, I turned it off. Go to page 2, turn it on, e-stop, no control. Let's go to page 1 and we come back, they should all be red. This is still in the right state and we can't control it. And we can't control it. If we go back to here, then we can turn it on and off. So everything functions as we would expect it to. So the main point of this video was to introduce this TSW. I have no idea what TSW stands for. It really doesn't make any sense. But you pick the item that you want. You could deactivate this BT0. You put a comma and 0 makes it disabled and 1 makes it enabled. It's a way that you can shut off functionality on a page. You could have one switch that disables a whole bunch of switches. Now if you noticed on this video, this e-stop switch only affects the motor. If you press it, it doesn't turn off both devices. I'm going to have a video coming up that I'm going to use this on, where the Arduino is going to have an e-stop that when you press the physical switch, it'll turn both of these, put these both in the e-stop position and shut off both devices. I'm purely doing it just for test. In any application you'd probably have an emergency stop, shut everything off, but I thought it would be interesting to show how you can control different things. On the temperature page, I'm going to add a slider here that's going to display the temperature. I'm going to hook up a potentiometer to the Arduino and feed the information back. Arduino will have two inputs, an emergency stop input and a potentiometer to fake the temperature. And then I'll have two LEDs. One will be for the heater and one will be for the motor. Well, that's about it for this video. If you like what you saw, consider giving me a thumbs up and also consider subscribing to the channel. Thanks for watching.